First off, I want to thank all of my colleagues who came here today to watch me perform my first or offer my first speech on the floor of the United States Senate. It's a great group, and it's a bipartisan group, and I think that our new class is exactly that, a group of great people who are very bipartisan and very willing to work to solve America's problems, and I'm proud to be part of this freshman class in the United States Senate. You know, people here all think that they know each other, and that's absolutely true, but sometimes it's a good reminder to tell people about where you come from. And I want to just spend a little bit of time talking about where I come from, and because I think it speaks a lot to what I believe and how I'll vote and who I am. You know, I grew up in a small town in North Dakota. Now, you all might think that that means 90,000 people. No, it's 90 people. My family was 1/10 the population of that small town. When I was born, my mother had 4 kids, and the oldest was 2, and there were no twins. By the time my parents were done having children, there were 7 children in 9 years. My dad was a seasonal construction worker, and my mom was a school cook and a janitor. Think about that. Seasonal construction worker and a school cook and a janitor. And, you know, it's interesting because my mom was someone who never let anyone be bullied. The worst thing you could do, in my mother's eyes, was pick on somebody who couldn't defend themselves. And we knew that's what our role would be in our entire life. That's a value we carry with us, me and my 6 siblings. And from my dad, we learned about community and about building community. My dad built the smallest VFW chapter in the country. Came back from World War II, knew that they needed a place to gather, to provide support for the veterans and support for each other, and that needed to be in his community. He built the ballpark. He built, you know, the fire hall, made sure it was chief of the volunteer fire department for years and years, head of the VFW, someone who really believed in community and believed that when Mrs. Poster needed her sidewalk shoveled so she could go to church, that was our job. It wasn't somebody else's job. You didn't look around to see who was going to come. You just picked up the shovel and you went down. And so I think, what do you learn from the place you grew up in? Well, in Manador, North Dakota, like communities all across this country, people gather at coffee tables, usually, you know, 7 o'clock or maybe 10:30 in the morning, maybe a little bit in the afternoon. And they talk about the problems of America. They talk about the problems of their community. And there is all ideologies at that table. There's Democrats and Republicans. As we say in Manador, there's Lutherans and Catholics. There's Green Bay fans and Vikings fans, which can be almost the most divisive issue. And they gather together and they solve all the problems of America if we would only listen here in Washington, D.C. But more importantly, even though they have horrible fights, they get together and they solve problems in their community. They figure out how to put up the Christmas lights on Main Street. They figure out how to fix the roof on the church, how to get a school bond passed so that they can expand classrooms. All across America, people work together. And that's the spirit. That's what I learned growing up in a small town in North Dakota, that we can accomplish things if we keep our eye on the goals, if we understand and appreciate that we all come from different places and that we all need to work together and that sometimes we are not going to agree, but we need to move forward. We need to work together to move this country forward. And so I want to just take a moment, and hopefully I won't get too emotional, but I want just to think about this, that we live in a country, an amazing country, where the daughter of a school cook and janitor and a seasonal construction worker can stand on the floor of the United States Senate and address this body. It's an amazing country, and we can never forget that value. But I never thought I'd be here. What do I mean by that? I never thought that I would come to the United States Senate. You know why? Because I had Senator Conrad and I had Senator Dorgan, and these are 2 giants who came to this body, spoke their mind, represented their state, and I knew they'd always represent me. Always. And then something happened. They got tired, frustrated, and they moved on with their life. And they asked me to join this fight, the fight for North Dakota, and the fight for our values. They asked me to step into their shoes, and I'm extraordinarily proud to be here, extraordinarily proud to represent agriculture. What do I mean by that? You know, we've got frustration in farm country, 16 million jobs in agriculture. It is the bright spot on our economy. It is adding to reducing our trade deficit. It is everything in my state. It is everything in my state. And you know what? We have small farmers, small family farmers who have to spend $1 million before they can even take a crop out of the ground. That's an average farmer in my state. That's how much it costs to engage in farming. And when we don't have a farm bill that provides some certainty, some security for them, we not only hurt them and hurt American agriculture, we risk our secure food supply. So I came here to speak for North Dakota farmers. I came here to speak for an energy policy. You know, it's an amazing place here. You hear everybody say, we believe in all of the above. And in North Dakota, we do all of the above. We not only are rich in natural gas and oil and coal, but we also have geothermal, we do ethanol, we do biofuels. We're one of the leading producers in this country of wind energy. We get it. But policies in this body and in this city need to be established that provide certainty to our energy producers. I'm here to address the concerns that we may not have if we don't have policies that address issues of redundancy and reliability in energy. We will fall further and further behind. And these are new technologies. There are great innovations that are coming down the pike. We need to address those. We need to move forward. I came here to talk about reasonable fiscal solutions. We just heard a good debate about the effects of sequestration. We know we have challenges, and on both sides of the aisle, there is a sense of purpose to change the trajectory of this debt. We are borrowing 40 cents of every dollar we spend. We have a national debt that is almost equal to our gross domestic product. We have interest payments that are the third highest payment that we make here, and that's at a time of record low interest rates. This is unsustainable, and it needs to be addressed, but it needs to be addressed, I think it needs to be addressed responsibly. And so, like many of you, I have my own personal passions, and they involve senior citizens, making sure that we provide them with a secure future, but also a secure future for future senior citizens. Veterans, care deeply about the condition of veterans' benefits and what we're going to do to reward and truly thank the 1% in this country who steps up to serve us. I have a great concern for people living in Indian country. What are we going to do to make sure they enjoy a future in our state? You take every problem of America and multiply it times 3, and that's the problems in Indian country. Need to be addressed. I care about Head Start. I believe a Head Start investment is a smart investment. So you might wonder, with all of these concerns and all of these issues, why I'm standing today to talk about marketplace fairness. Well, you're going to hear a lot about a case. It's called Quill versus North Dakota. What you don't know is probably that case, the whole caption is Quill versus North Dakota ex-rel MK Heidi Heitkamp. Over 20 years ago, I heard the despair of Main Street businesses. I had a woman who came to me. She ran a little wallpaper shop in her town. And at the time, and I don't know if it's true today, you had to buy these wallpaper books from the companies. So it was an investment in presenting this product. And people would come to her, and they would open up the book, and she'd help them do a little interior design. She'd work through the fabrics and work through all of this. And then they walked out, and she never saw them again. And she knew, and I knew, what they did is they went home, looked in their catalog, took that lot number that she had given them, and they ordered it on the internet. And maybe they ordered it more cheaply than just the sales tax. But she wanted to know from me, when I was tax commissioner, how I could justify a 5% disadvantage that she was having. She wanted to know what I could do to level the playing field so that she at least had a chance. She at least could compete. Well, I listened, and it wasn't just that woman who ran the wallpaper business. It was the furniture stores. It was the Main Street office supply stores. And we initiated a lawsuit called Quill. Now, for those of you who think that this is going to unduly burden small business, I want you to think about this. In my state, why we sued Quill is they were the third highest retailer of office products in my entire state. Third highest. It's pretty remarkable. But yet they were enjoying this disadvantage of not having to collect sales tax. You know, so we took the case to the Supreme Court. And some would say that didn't turn out very well for you. And I'll tell you kind of some basic information about the court case, because at the time there was a sense that there was not due process jurisdiction if you didn't have physical contacts in your state. Now, we all know, a lot of us are lawyers in this body, that the long-arm statutes had at the time moved on. The question was what in fact would be the contact? And could we, in tax jurisdiction and in sales tax collection, get the court to agree that due process was not disturbed by an extension of regulation and responsibility to internet sales, and at that time catalog sellers. The court agreed with that piece, but when they were challenged with the argument that did North Dakota's imposition affect interstate commerce, and they heard a lot of arguments that you're going to hear today. You know, a lot of jurisdictions, it's not very streamlined. They heard a lot of those arguments, and they said, you know what, we aren't comfortable. But you know where this belongs? It belongs where the Constitution puts this discussion. It belongs in the United States Senate. It belongs in the House of Representatives. It belongs to Congress, because Congress has the obligation of regulating interstate commerce. And so here we are. Here we are almost 20 years later, over 20 years later since the court case was decided, still debating this issue. And this issue has grown tremendously because of the explosion of internet sales. Remote sellers are getting bigger, and our Main Street businesses continue to suffer, continue to struggle. You're going to hear a lot today about how this bill discriminates. You're going to hear a lot about how it's not fair. You're going to hear about how it affects small business. And every time you hear that argument, I want you, just members of this body, to think just for a moment that you are that one woman with the wallpaper books. Or you're the small drugstore trying to sell candles to supplement the prescription drug business that you have. You're that small business, and what you see is you see that you have burdens of collecting this sales tax, and you're building your community. Your bulletin, you take out a little ad in your school newspaper to help the school newspaper, or maybe you put an ad on the scoreboard down at the high school. And maybe you, when they come around and ask for a little money for the fire hall, you chip in. And you're building community. And you're there, and you're employing people there. And you're wondering why this government can authorize and approve discrimination against you. Why you have to fight so hard. And you're going to hear a lot today about small businesses that operate on the margin, right? You know, retail has got a small margin. Exactly. That's exactly the point. Because that small margin, it's just as small for that Main Street business, but they've got a 5% disadvantage. And so today and tomorrow, we're going to hear a lot about this bill. And I know feelings are running fairly high for people who oppose it. But when you hear discrimination and you hear that this is not the role of this body to take this on, understand this, it's exactly the role of this body. It is exactly the obligation that we have to level the playing field, to make things fair, to respond to the needs of our community. And that's why we're fighting so hard, and that's why we're working so hard on this bill. And I think we're going to get it done. And let's just think for a moment. We've taken a couple votes. They've been pretty good, lopsided votes for us. If we fail in moving this bill after it has such tremendous support, how do we do the tough stuff? How do we do the deficit reduction that we need to do? How do we do the tough stuff that comes here? Let's do this. Let's level the playing field. Let's make this responsive to those Main Street businesses who every day struggle and are simply asking for justice. They're simply asking for equity. I yield the floor.